You know that feeling when you open your property tax bill and just stare at it, thinking, there's no way this is right? Well, chances are you're onto something. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden, often bizarre rules that make property taxes fundamentally unfair for so many people.
I mean, think about it. How can two homes, literally identical, sitting right next to each other, end up with tax bills that are thousands upon thousands of dollars apart? It just screams mistake, right? But here's the crazy part. It's not a mistake. It's the system working exactly the way it was designed to.
So, let's look at a perfect, real-world example down in Miami. Picture this, a townhouse bought way back in 2006. And, right next door, an identical one. Same size, same everything. But it just sold last year to a new owner. So how do their 2024 tax bills stack up?
Okay, so the person who's been there for almost 2 decades, their bill is just a little over $4,000. Not too bad. But what about the brand new neighbor?
Get ready for this. Almost $15,000. That is a $10,000 difference for the exact same house. And no, it's not a typo. It's the direct result of a very specific rule. So what's going on here? The culprit is a rule called an assessment limit. You see it in places like Florida and California. Basically, it puts a cap on how much your home's taxable value can go up each year. So even if your home's market value explodes, the value they use for taxes just inches up slowly. It's like a protection plan for longtime owners. But the side effect, it creates this massive, unfair gap between them and any new buyers. And believe me, this is just scratching the surface. In some places, the rules get, well, truly bizarre.
And that brings us to New York City, which you could argue has one of the most tangled and frankly unfair property tax systems in the entire country.
Now, if you look at the process on paper, it seems simple enough, right? The city figures out what class your property is, calculates its value, slaps on some growth caps, and boom, there's your tax rate. The problem is, the unfairness is baked in from the very, very beginning. This is what some call the system's original sin. It's fundamentally unequal from step one. State law says that small homes, think 1 to 3 families, get assessed at only 6% of what they're actually worth on the market. 6%. But big apartment buildings and commercial properties, they're assessed at 25%. Just that one rule creates this huge tax haven for certain homeowners, pushing the financial weight onto renters and businesses. And it gets even crazier. Remember how in Florida, when a house sells, the tax value kind of resets to the new market price? Well, in New York City, that doesn't happen. The low assessment just carries over. This means those massive tax breaks, based on values from decades ago, are basically locked in forever. It creates these permanent, deep distortions across whole neighborhoods.
So, what does this actually look like in real life, with real money? A study by the Community Service Society did the math on every single property in the city, and it shows exactly who's winning and who is definitely losing.
Just take a look at these 2 properties in Hamilton Heights, Manhattan. Both are worth about the same, around $4.2 million. But their tax bills? Totally different worlds. The single-family home pays a little over $12,000 a year, but the apartment building, which houses 43 different families, it pays over $71,000. That is nearly 6 times more in taxes for a property with the same market value. It's wild.
And this isn't just about homeowners versus renters. The system's impact cuts much deeper. Research shows these policies have created really significant racial inequities, with communities of color bearing a disproportionate share of the tax burden.
Let's just compare 2 neighborhoods in Brooklyn. On one hand, you've got Park Slope. It's a majority white area with really high property values, and yet it has some of the lowest effective tax rates in the whole city. Then you have Canarsie, a majority black neighborhood. Homeowners there are often paying effective tax rates that are double what people pay in Park Slope.
And this example really drives home how backward the system is. Okay, check this out. 2 duplexes. One is in the East Village, worth a massive $5.6 million. Its effective tax rate, a tiny 0.2%. The other is in Canarsie, worth about $500,000. Its effective tax rate is 1%. So the home worth way, way less is being taxed at a rate 5 times higher. It's completely upside down.
Okay, So if the system is this messed up, there has to be a way to fight back, right? Well, there is. You can appeal. But here's the kicker. The official process for fixing an unfair tax bill is often just as broken.
I mean, that's the logical next question, isn't it? Why not just appeal? Everyone has the right to challenge their assessment. But it turns out actually getting a fair hearing, well, that's a whole other story, filled with its own problems.
The first hurdle is just information, a huge information gap. Research found that non-minority homeowners were way more likely to even know that appealing their property tax was an option. We're talking a 24 percentage point difference. And as they say, you can't use a right you don't even know you have.
So then researchers tried something really interesting. They basically offered homeowners a kind of insurance to cover any costs if they appealed. For non-minority homeowners, it didn't really change anything. But for minority homeowners, the number of appeals shot through the roof. What that suggests is that a major barrier is the fear of a biased system. Once you take away some of that perceived risk, people are much more willing to stand up for themselves.
And that fear of bias? It seems to be based in reality. In one study, researchers sent identical emails to tax assessors. The only thing they changed was the name on the email, using ones that sounded stereotypically white or black. The result? Assessors were significantly less likely to even reply to the emails from homeowners with black-sounding names.
And here's the final nail in the coffin. Even when minority homeowners jump through all these hoops and actually file an appeal, they are less likely to win. The same research found that even when help was offered to homeowners, it only successfully increased the win rate for non-minority residents.
The researchers' conclusion is just devastating. They state, and I'm quoting here, that property tax appeals are not an effective tool for correcting biases in property assessments. In other words, the very system that's supposed to be the solution is part of the problem.
Look, this is a pretty bleak picture, I know, but it's not a lost cause. This isn't some impossible problem to solve. In fact, the very same reports that lay out all these issues also provide a clear roadmap for how to fix it.
So for a place like New York City, the experts lay out a clear plan. First things first, level the playing field. Get rid of those crazy 6% versus 45% assessment ratios. Make it so tax caps actually reset when a property is sold. Then, you rebalance the whole thing by fairly taxing vacant land and getting tax credits to the renters who are shouldering so much of this burden. And you know, while these are for New York, the basic ideas, taxing property based on what it's actually worth and making sure the system is fair, that applies pretty much everywhere.
So the fixes are there. The roadmap has been drawn by experts. The system's flaws aren't a secret. They're out in the open. Which leaves us with the real question, right? It's not a technical one anymore, it's a political one. If we know how to fix it, why is it so incredibly hard to actually get it done?